You absolutely have to stick around until the end of this hour, because I am currently looking at the financial filings of a failed wool shoe brand that just exploded by 400% on the stock market.
Right.
Why? Because they basically woke up this morning, looked at their rotting inventory of sustainable slip-ons, and just randomly decided to announce they're an AI cloud computing company now.
Unbelievable.
And Wall Street completely lost its mind. And while that financial fiction is playing out, scientists just finished assembling the skeletal remains of a 30-foot terror croc, which is a literal aquatic nightmare from the Cretaceous period that used to eat apex predator dinosaurs for breakfast.
Oh, God.
We are talking bus-sized monsters, zero-heat quantum computing, and an international naval blockade that is physically choking the global economy to death right as we speak.
We are Mike and Abby, and welcome to Daily World Podcast. Forget everything you know about boring news. We are taking the wildest, most impactful stories that hit the planet today and breaking them down so you don't have to.
Whether you are on a long drive, crushing a workout, or just feeling a little bored, we are here to keep you updated with the world and make your next hour incredibly interesting.
And, looking at the sheer mountain of chaos we have on the docket today, I really think there is a hidden theme connecting all of this.
Yeah.
If you really look at the mechanics of what is happening globally today, the theme is friction. We're looking at the consequences of intense, unbearable friction. Geopolitical friction tearing up the Middle East, political friction breaking Washington apart, corporations desperately trying to eliminate human friction from their payrolls, and physicists literally figuring out how to eliminate physical friction to build zero-heat supercomputers.
That is exactly the lens we need to view today through.
Yeah.
And the most intense geopolitical friction on the planet today, April 15, is happening right in the Strait of Hormuz, because the United States military just implemented a comprehensive total naval blockade of Iranian ports. The weekend peace negotiations in Islamabad entirely collapsed. They just fell apart. So the Trump administration shifted overnight to a strategy of total economic interdiction. The U.S. military's Central Command, CENTCOM, came out and confirmed the full implementation of this blockade.
Right.
We are talking about targeting literally all maritime traffic entering or exiting Iranian ports.
Wait, hold on, stop, back up. A total naval blockade. I need to understand how this actually works mechanically in 2026.
Okay, yeah.
Because you cannot just build a physical wall across the Persian Gulf. How do you physically stop 90% of an entire nation's sea trade without instantly triggering a massive global war? What does the blockade actually look like on the water right now?
It looks like pure aggressive intimidation backed by overwhelming firepower. You are right, it is not a physical wall, it is a dynamic moving perimeter. The U.S. Navy has deployed Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, specifically the USS Frank Peterson and the USS Michael Murphy, directly into the Strait of Hormuz. These are multi-mission guided missile destroyers. Their primary operations right now are mine clearing, because obviously the first thing a blockaded country does is try to mine the shipping lanes to create chaos and aggressive blockade enforcement.
Right.
They establish this massive radar footprint, and they basically hail every single commercial vessel trying to enter Iranian waters.
So they are essentially sitting in one of the most critical global shipping lanes on Earth, playing a massive game of chicken. What are the actual rules of engagement here? If a commercial freighter ignores a radio call, do we just sink them?
The directive from the administration is incredibly hostile. President Trump announced a seek and interdict directive. Any vessel that even attempts to pay an Iranian transit toll is immediately targeted for interdiction, which means boarding parties, seizing the vessel, or physically forcing it to turn around. But the real escalation is directed at the Iranian military itself. Trump explicitly stated that any Iranian fast attack ships that even approach the blockade perimeter will be destroyed using airstrikes. He compared the operation to the tactics used against narcotics vessels in the Eastern Pacific.
Right.
It is a system of kill protocol for any challengers.
A system of kill. That is incredibly aggressive language. But Iran is not like a drug cartel in a speedboat.
Yeah.
They are a massive regional power. They're not just going to sit back and watch their entire economy evaporate overnight. What is the mechanical countermove here? Because cornering a regional power like that feels like lighting a match in a powder keg.
The countermove is massive economic retaliation. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian came out stating Tehran is technically seeking dialogue, but he paired that with a severe threat.
Of course.
He warned that Iran will physically block all shipping in the Persian Gulf, the Sea of Oman, and the Red Sea if the U.S. blockade continues. They are basically saying, if we cannot ship our oil, nobody in the region ships their oil.
Wow.
And to show you the scale of their posturing, Al Jazeera is reporting that Iran is demanding $270 billion in war damages.
$270 billion. That is not a diplomatic negotiation tactic. That is a straight-up ransom note.
Exactly.
And if they actually try to choke off the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf, the rest of the world is going to feel that friction instantly. What happens to the global energy markets when you threaten the Strait of Hormuz like this?
The friction is already burning up the markets. The International Energy Agency is warning that this makes April a significantly tougher month for global energy stability than March. We are already seeing WTI crude oil jumping up to $102.76 a barrel.
Ouch.
And the International Monetary Fund just revised their global growth forecast down to 3.1%, pointing specifically to these blockade disruptions. They're warning that we are seeing a Katy E-shaped recovery globally.
Wait, I know what a key-shaped recovery is, but what is the E part of that? Explain the mechanics of a Katy E-shaped economic reality.
Yeah. Okay, so imagine the economy is a giant escalator. A normal recovery means the whole escalator moves up. A K-shaped recovery means the escalator breaks in half. The top line of the letter K goes up, meaning high-income consumers, massive corporations, and wealthy asset holders keep driving growth and getting richer.
Right, they are fine.
But the bottom line of the K points down, meaning working-class people are losing wealth. The E modification specifically stands for energy and essentials. The K to E shape means the divergence is accelerating specifically because the cost of basic energy and essential goods is crushing the bottom half.
Wow.
The wealthy do not care if gas is $5 a gallon. The middle class gets entirely wiped out by it.
That makes total sense, and it is a brutal reality for the average person listening to this right now. If the K to E shape is being driven by energy volatility, what does China do? Because their entire manufacturing base relies heavily on imported oil from that exact region.
Oh, China is furious. The Chinese Foreign Ministry condemned the blockade as dangerous and irresponsible. They are aggressively asserting that the Strait of Hormuz remains open to Chinese commercial interests regardless of what the United States declares.
Right.
And the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is essentially begging all parties to respect freedom of navigation before this spirals totally out of control.
Yeah.
Interestingly, we did just see an India-flagged LPG tanker, the Jag Vikram, successfully cross Hormuz. It is the first Indian vessel to pass since the Islamabad ceasefire talks collapsed.
So there are tiny cracks in the blockade, but it is absolute mind-numbing brinkmanship. What genuinely blows my mind, though, is the psychological whiplash coming from the administration itself. You have multi-billion-dollar destroyers in the water threatening a system of kill, but the messaging from Washington is totally erratic.
Exactly, because in a highly aggressive digital post, Trump warned that a whole civilization will die tonight if the blockade was challenged. He is threatening biblical levels of destruction. But then, almost immediately following that post, he significantly softens the rhetoric. He put out another message suggesting the war is very close to over after supposedly getting a phone call from Iranian representatives.
It is textbook psychological warfare. It is the madman theory in action. You threaten total unhinged annihilation in one breath and then tease a peaceful grand deal in the next.
Right.
It forces the adversary to guess whether they are dealing with a diplomat or a wrecking ball. But this erratic friction isn't just happening on the water, it is happening at the negotiating table too. What is going on with Israel and Lebanon? Because the violence in southern Lebanon has been escalating for months.
It is a massive diplomatic disconnect, and this is vital to understand. Right now, envoys from Israel and Lebanon are actually meeting face-to-face in Washington, D.C. This is a historic moment. This is the first time they have held direct diplomatic talks since 1993.
1993. That is over 30 years of avoiding the table. But they're sitting down in Washington right now while the shooting is still actively happening on the ground.
Yes, and that is where the mechanics of this negotiation feel completely surreal. The stated goal of the Washington summit is to establish a ceasefire in southern Lebanon. The Lebanese government is reporting that the death toll has now surpassed 2,000 people, which is devastating.
Yeah.
But Israel is maintaining a totally firm, unyielding stance at the table. They are refusing to even consider any ceasefire framework until The Iranian-backed militia Hezbollah is fully disarmed.
Which is an impossible demand. Hezbollah has already publicly stated that disarming is a futile condition. They are a heavily entrenched militia. They are never going to just voluntarily hand over their rockets because a diplomat in a suit asked them to.
Exactly. While these diplomats are sitting in comfortable air-conditioned rooms in D.C. debating policy, the actual combat is intensifying. The Israeli army just reported that they are encircling Bint Jabal. That is a major Hezbollah stronghold, and the military is claiming they killed over 100 fighters in just the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, Lebanese officials are furious and are demanding an immediate halt to the airstrikes, specifically pointing to a highly controversial strike that hit an international Red Cross location in Tyre, which resulted in 6 deaths on Tuesday.
Okay, let me get this straight, because the logistics of this are completely broken. You have state-appointed diplomats sitting at a formal table in Washington trying to negotiate a binding peace treaty.
Yeah.
But the actual combatants on the ground, Hezbollah, are completely ignoring the talks.
Yep.
How do you negotiate a peace treaty when the people pulling the triggers do not respect the authority of the people doing the talking?
You cannot. It is fundamentally broken. The official Lebanese government is at the table, but the Hezbollah leader, Naim Qassem, literally urged the cancellation of the talks entirely. He is publicly telling the diplomats to pack up and go home. It exposes the terrifying reality that the official state representatives have zero control over the heavily armed combatants operating within their own borders. The militia has totally decoupled from the state.
It's a totally impossible situation. Did the diplomats in Washington even reach any kind of preliminary agreement?
No formal agreement at all. They just agreed to a second round of meetings in Washington in several weeks. And even the international allies watching this are fracturing under the friction. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni heavily criticized the continued military strikes happening concurrently with the peace talks, and Trump immediately responded by publicly questioning her courage regarding the broader regional strategy.
A global blockade is enough to tank the world economy on a normal day. But that entirely pales in comparison to the absolute mess we're about to get into regarding the sudden, scandalous collapse of a major U.S. politician.
We have to bring this back to domestic politics because the political landscape in Washington just shifted dramatically, and the friction is tearing the chamber apart. Representative Eric Swalwell has officially resigned his seat in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Completely resigned. Like he didn't just step back from a committee assignment pending investigation.
Fully resigned, walked away. He also officially suspended his campaign for California governor over the weekend. This is following a series of mounting, extremely serious misconduct allegations. To be completely neutral and just impartially report the facts exactly as provided by the documents, there are 5 separate misconduct claims that have surfaced against him this month alone.
Wow.
The most recent, and by far the most severe, is an accusation of rape brought forward by a Los Angeles woman.
And what is his official legal response to this?
Swalwell has categorically denied all the accusations. He is publicly describing them as false claims. He has stated that these allegations are entirely fabricated and specifically designed to damage his political career and force him out of the race.
If he is claiming total innocence, resigning entirely from Congress is a massive, drastic step. Usually, politicians fight tooth and nail to hold onto their seats during an inquiry.
He didn't have a choice. The friction from within his own party was becoming immense. House Democrats were facing intense, growing public pressure to address these allegations head-on, with multiple members actively calling for a formal ethics commission to investigate the matter.
Right.
The political liability was just too high. So he steps down, and the timing of this resignation is creating an unbelievable partisan firestorm, because simultaneously, on the exact same day, the Justice Department's Weaponization Working Group dropped a massive report.
Wait, what exactly did this weaponization report claim?
The report aggressively accuses the previous administration of manipulating the FACE Act to specifically target and prosecute political opponents.
Okay, stop. The FACE Act. We need to explain this because people hear these acronyms thrown around on cable news and have no idea what they actually mean. What is the FACE Act originally, and how is the DOJ claiming it was weaponized?
Right. The FACE Act stands for the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. It was originally passed in the 1990s specifically to prevent protesters from physically blocking access to reproductive health clinics.
Okay.
If you chained yourself to the doors of a clinic to stop people from going inside, the federal government could prosecute you under the FACE Act. It was designed for a very specific type of physical obstruction at a specific location.
So how does a law about blocking health clinics get turned into a weapon against political opponents?
According to the Weaponization Working Group's report, the previous administration allegedly stretched the legal definition of the FACE Act far beyond its original intent. The report claims they used it to aggressively prosecute certain nonviolent political protests and demonstrations, effectively weaponizing a clinic access law to target ideological rivals with federal charges.
Wow.
So you have this highly explosive report dropping, inflaming all the partisan tensions in D.C. right at the exact moment Swalwell, who is one of the most vocal, high-profile critics of the Trump administration, departs the chamber in scandal.
It creates a massive political vacuum on the floor. He is stepping away to fight these severe legal battles as a private citizen.
Hmm.
But look at the calendar. In a week where the House desperately needs every single vote to manage war powers resolutions for the Middle East blockade we just talked about, and they have to vote on global surveillance extensions, a huge voice in the opposition is just gone.
Speaking of that surveillance extension, that is the other massive, high-stakes domestic crisis happening today, the reauthorization of Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA.
Okay, this is another one we need to break down mechanically. What does FISA Section 702 actually do? People constantly scream about warrantless surveillance, but what does that mean for a normal citizen whose data gets swept up? Because the mechanics of how the government looks at our data are terrifying.
It is incredibly controversial, and it works like a massive digital dragnet. Section 702 allows U.S. intelligence agencies to collect communications from non-citizens who are located outside the United States. That is the stated purpose. They are hunting for foreign terrorists, spies, and adversaries. But the mechanical reality of modern digital communication is that it is all tangled together. When the intelligence agencies cast this massive digital net into the ocean to catch foreign fish, the private digital data of millions of everyday Americans gets caught in the net as bycatch. Emails, text messages, phone records, internet history.
Okay, so my text messages to my brother in Canada might get swept into this massive government database. But they need a judge to give them a warrant to actually open and read my specific messages, right?
No, that is the core issue that has everyone terrified. Critics and privacy advocates point out that intelligence agencies can query that massive database for American communications without needing a traditional warrant. If your data is already sitting in the database as incidental collection, an agent can just search your name or your phone number.
That is essentially a backdoor search through American citizens' private lives. Where does the current administration stand on this right now?
President Trump is aggressively demanding that Congress immediately extend this program without any new restrictions. He is arguing that it is absolutely essential and life-saving for identifying foreign threats, particularly given the ongoing, highly volatile Middle East conflict and the naval blockade.
But wait a minute. Trump used to heavily criticize FISA during his first term. He absolutely hated it because he believed it was used to spy on his own campaign.
He did. His stance has completely flipped. The current wartime footing and the international friction have totally reorganized the administration's internal priorities. However, a bipartisan group of lawmakers, both left-wing progressives and right-wing conservatives, are pushing back extremely hard. They want strict privacy protections built into the reauthorization that would explicitly require intelligence agents to get a warrant before querying any American's data in that system. Again, we are just impartially reading what the congressional documents show. Both sides are digging in.
And what is the administration's counterargument to requiring a warrant?
The administration claims that requiring warrants would fundamentally gut the program's effectiveness and its speed. They argue that in a wartime scenario, waiting for a judge to sign a piece of paper could cost lives. And to show you exactly how intensely focused the administration is on internal security right now, Trump is simultaneously threatening to jail reporters who refuse to identify their sources related to a high-level leaker.
Really?
Yeah, someone inside the government disclosed classified information to the press about a downed U.S. pilot in Iran, and the White House is aggressively hunting for the source.
So let me summarize this. They are actively threatening journalists with jail time for doing their jobs, while simultaneously demanding unchecked, warrantless surveillance powers over the American public to maintain security.
Exactly, and the friction is spreading. The Department of Justice just intensified an inquiry into former CIA Director John Brennan following the transfer of classified transcripts from the House. It is a massive, aggressive focus on internal security, prosecuting leaks, and tightening the grip on information flow. The tension in Washington is completely palpable.
We'll get back to the fallout of this surveillance debate in a second, but first, you have to hear what is happening in the corporate world, because human beings are literally coding themselves out of a job.
You want to talk about a total disruption of the labor market? Look at the technology sector. Snap Inc. The massive social media giant just announced on April 15 that they are aggressively cutting 16% of their entire global workforce.
16%. How many actual human beings are losing their livelihoods today?
Approximately 1,000 jobs eliminated overnight. They are taking massive restructuring charges between $95 million and $130 million just to handle the severance packages and healthcare coverage payouts for the people they are letting go.
Wow.
U.S. employees are getting 4 months of severance. Furthermore, CEO Evan Spiegel informed the remaining highly anxious staff that 300 additional open roles are going to remain completely unfilled. The hiring freeze is absolute.
Okay, but why? Tech has been doing rolling layoffs for years now to correct for overhiring during the pandemic. But what is the specific mechanical driver for cutting 1,000 jobs right now?
The driver is artificial intelligence. Snap revealed in their filings that an astonishing 65% of their new code is now generated entirely by AI.
Wait, hold on. Read that again. 65% of all new code, not just bug fixes or basic maintenance scripts or compiling tasks.
New code. 65%. They explicitly cited operational efficiencies that allow them to run the platform with significantly smaller human teams. The AI is doing the heavy lifting of writing the architecture. They expect this move to generate over $500 million in annualized cost savings by the second half of 2026, and Wall Street absolutely loved it. Snap stock immediately rose 11% in pre-market trading to $6.23.
This is the absolute terrifying definition of the efficiency-first era. If a tech giant can just plug in an AI model to write 65% of its underlying code, the entry-level developer job is completely dead.
Yep.
The junior coder does not exist anymore. You do not need a team of 10 junior engineers to write basic functions. If one senior engineer with an advanced AI prompt can generate, test, and deploy the exact same volume of work in an hour, the friction of human labor is being erased.
If you're watching on YouTube right now, drop a comment and let us know. How long until AI can do 65% of your job? Seriously, look at your daily tasks. Are you safe or are you sweating right now? Because this trend is absolutely not isolated to Snap. Amazon, Oracle, Meta, they have all been slashing headcount relentlessly this spring, and they're all explicitly citing AI productivity as the reason.
It is a complete bloodbath for the tech labor market. But wait, this is where the economy stops making sense to a normal person. While tech workers are losing their jobs by the thousands, and we just talked about energy markets getting crushed by a naval blockade, the overall stock market is somehow booming during a global war.
It is a totally bizarre, highly concentrated rally. The S&P 500 is hovering near an all-time historical high. It just rose 0.45% to 6,999, barely shy of the record 7,002.28.
How is that even mathematically possible with everything we just talked about? The Middle East is quite literally on fire, energy prices are spiking, and the Katy E-shaped recovery is crushing the middle class. Who is driving the S&P 500 up?
The financial titans. Morgan Stanley and Bank of America just reported their first quarter earnings, and they totally crushed Wall Street forecasts. They blew past expectations. Morgan Stanley posted earnings per share of $3.43 on massive revenue of $20.6 billion.
Insane.
That is a 16% year-over-year increase. Bank of America reported an EPS of $1.11, beating the $1.01 forecast, with net revenue climbing 7% to $30.3 billion.
Let me guess. They didn't make that money from regular consumer banking. They didn't make it from giving normal people car loans or checking accounts.
Nope. It was from significant surges in investment banking and trading revenue. Bank of America saw investment banking rise 21% and trading jump 13%. The CEO, Brian Moynihan, literally said healthy client activity indicates a resilient American economy despite the ongoing Iran war.
Right. Resilient. The economy is extremely resilient if you have a multi-trillion-dollar fortress balance sheet and make your money trading volatility on the margins. The volatility of the naval blockade is exactly what they're trading against.
That's right.
But less than half of the S&P 500's actual assets are driving this growth. It is all concentrated in mega-cap tech and massive finance. The market is basically putting a massive premium on the few elite institutions that can survive high interest rates and global conflict, while everyone else burns.
And the stability of those interest rates is incredibly fragile. President Trump just publicly signaled he might inject some massive friction into the financial system by threatening to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell if he does not resign by May 15.
May 15. So we have roughly 1 month until the head of the central bank might get ousted, which would throw global monetary policy into a tailspin. Fantastic. But you mentioned something in the intro that I have been waiting for, the shoe company.
This is hands down the most absurd, ridiculous financial story of the day, maybe the year. Allbirds, the company that makes those sustainable wool slip-on shoes.
Oh, I know them. Everyone in Silicon Valley wore them 5 years ago. They look like slippers made out of recycled sweaters.
Well, their revenue completely tanked. It dropped 19.7% last year, and they were carrying a crushing net loss of $77 million. The shoe business was failing, so what did they do? On March 30, they sold their entire shoe brand, their patents, and their physical footwear inventory for $39 million to American Exchange Group.
So they sold the shoes. They're no longer a shoe company. What exactly are they?
They rebranded the corporate shell. They are now officially called Newbird AI.
You cannot be serious.
I am dead serious. On April 15, they announced a $50 million convertible financing facility to enter the AI compute sector. They are pivoting their entire corporate existence to become a GPU as a service or GPU cloud solutions provider.
Okay, hold on. We need to explain GPU as a service because this is the funniest thing I ever heard.
Right.
GPU is a graphics processing unit. It is the highly advanced, incredibly expensive microchip that powers artificial intelligence.
Right.
GPU as a service means you buy thousands of these chips, build massive data centers with insane industrial cooling systems, and rent the computing power out to tech companies over the cloud.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. When I think of highly advanced artificial general intelligence infrastructure, my brain immediately goes to the itchy, sustainable wool slip-ons my uncle wears to the farmer's market.
Yeah.
Just a flawless, logical transition.
And the market completely lost its mind. Shares of Allbirds, trading under the ticker BIRARD, surged over 400% on the news. In intraday trading, the stock saw a peak gain of 624%. Algorithmic trading systems and retail investors just saw the words AI and GPU in the press release and aggressively bought everything.
624%.
Yeah.
Is pure financial fiction.
Okay.
Wall Street is actively rewarding the mere idea of AI infrastructure, regardless of actual capability.
Yeah.
The Wall Street Journal specifically noted they have zero existing technical infrastructure in the server market. They have no data centers, they have no cooling solutions, they have no engineers. But if you hold Newbird AI stock, congratulations, you are now participating in data center infrastructure, not consumer retail. It is a complete grift fueled by algorithmic momentum.
That 400% AI shoe pivot is pure financial fiction, but the reality we're about to step into regarding a literal monster from the Cretaceous period is pure nightmare fuel.
Wait, before you get to the monster, we have to talk about the physical limits of all this computing. Because if everyone, including random shoe companies, is building AI servers, they are going to literally melt the global power grid. The friction of the heat is going to stop AI in its tracks.
Exactly, and that ties perfectly into the biggest scientific breakthrough of the day. Physics researchers just announced the first direct experimental observation of electrons in graphene behaving as a nearly frictionless liquid.
Frictionless liquid. What does that actually mean for everyday technology?
Yeah.
Because frictionless sounds like magic.
Normally, the core laws of physics dictate that electrons act as individual erratic particles. Imagine a busy, chaotic highway where cars are constantly bumping into each other and scraping against the guardrails.
Okay.
Every time they collide, it creates friction, and that friction creates heat. That heat is the absolute fundamental bottleneck of all modern computing. It is why your laptop gets hot. It is why these massive AI servers need industrial water cooling systems. The thermal friction slows everything down.
Right. Thermodynamics. You can only make a microchip so fast before it literally melts its own circuits. The heat is the ceiling of human progress right now.
But in this new quantum state observed in graphene, the electrons stop acting like individual crashing cars. They flow together like a synchronized flock of birds. They move as a perfect frictionless liquid. Zero friction means almost zero heat waste. The research published today suggests that this could bypass the thermodynamic limits that have heavily constrained computing for the last 20 years. It is literally being called the holy grail for semiconductor engineers.
Okay, that is actually massive. If you connect this back to that Allbirds AI server farm story, The physical constraints of technology are being shattered on the exact same day the labor constraints are.
Yeah.
If you have an AI writing 65% of the code and you have graphene microchips running servers with zero heat limit, computing power is about to go completely exponential. The friction is gone.
And it gets deeper into the bizarre mechanics of quantum physics. Researchers led by the University of the Chinese Academy of Sciences reported the first direct experimental observation of the Migdal effect.
The Migdal effect.
The Migdal effect. It is a theoretical concept that was predicted way back in 1939, but no one could prove it. It is a quantum process where a recoiling atomic nucleus ejects an electron.
Right.
Think of it like a bowling ball hitting a pin so hard that the pin shatters and shoots off a splinter. By finally proving this nuclear recoil actually exists and measuring the ejected electron, they opened up entirely new avenues for tracking light dark matter in the universe. Plus, in the commercial sector, we just saw the unveiling of the Pinnacle architecture. It is the first fault-tolerant quantum computing design that shows an order of magnitude reduction in the qubits needed to factor 2,048-bit RSA integers.
I will be completely honest with you. You lost me at recoiling nucleus and RSA integers. You promised me a dinosaur eater. I am not equipped to handle quantum encryption mathematics right now. Stop talking about qubits and tell me how a crocodile physically eats a T-Rex.
Fine, fine. Paleontologists just unveiled the first scientifically accurate full skeleton reconstruction of Deinosuchus schwimmeri.
The Terror Croc.
The Terror Croc.
Yeah.
This thing lived in the late Cretaceous period, right alongside the most famous dinosaurs. The reconstruction proves it reached lengths of over 30 feet. Imagine a modern city bus, but it is a heavily armored amphibious predator lurking in the swamps.
30 feet. That is incomprehensible. But how does a swamp crocodile physically take down a bipedal dinosaur? What are the mechanics of that hunt? Because a dinosaur is fast and terrestrial.
Ambush physics and bite force. The researchers proved that its bite force likely vastly exceeded that of the Tyrannosaurus rex. It was the absolute, undisputed apex predator of its swamp-based ecosystem. It didn't chase dinosaurs across plains. It eliminated the friction of the hunt by waiting. It would wait completely submerged near the water's edge. When a massive dinosaur came to the bank to drink, it would launch out, clamp down with a bite force strong enough to instantly crush solid bone and drag them underwater to drown them. It used the water to eliminate the dinosaur's leverage.
That is horrifying.
Yeah.
A 30-foot water trap. And they just figured out how big this thing was today.
They reanalyzed fragmented fossils that were originally found decades ago but had never been properly assembled or understood until now.
And speaking of old museum items, scientists just found a badly mangled dinosaur skull sitting completely forgotten in a museum drawer and identified it as a rare species that bridges a massive gap in the evolutionary timeline. They literally said it shouldn't have existed based on what they knew.
Museum drawers are just full of mislabeled monsters, apparently. Someone put a box in a cabinet 50 years ago and forgot about it. It has been a huge day for correcting the historical record. A study from the University of Hawaii definitively overturned a decades-old belief, proving through fossil records that indigenous Hawaiians did not hunt native waterbirds to extinction as previously taught in textbooks.
Right.
And scientists finally solved a 160-million-year-old fossil mystery. They identified a 550-million-year-old sponge that completely lacked any hard skeletal parts. Because it had no hard friction-resistant bones, it completely degraded, which finally explains why it has been totally absent from the fossil record for so long.
I would rather face down that 30-foot crocodile than deal with the absolute legal nightmare we are about to get into regarding a massive international pop star and a 16-year-old club secret.
The cultural news today is completely dominating the timeline, and the biggest, most shocking story is coming out of Australia. The Victoria Police have officially confirmed they launched a formal historical sexual assault investigation into American singer Katy Perry.
Katy Perry, an active police investigation.
Yes. And it all stems from a formal police report filed by actress Ruby Rose, who is now 40 years old. The incident in question allegedly took place way back in 2010 at the Spice Market nightclub in Melbourne.
2010, that is 16 years ago. Memory degrades, evidence is gone. What exactly is the specific allegation here?
Rose claims that Perry touched her inappropriately at the club without consent. She originally went public with these accusations in a series of cryptic, highly emotional posts on the social media platform Threads.
Okay.
In those posts, Rose claimed the incident was so disturbing it physically made her vomit. Now she says she is legally prohibited from speaking any further about it because it has transitioned from a social media grievance to an active, formal, legal probe.
And what is Katy Perry's camp saying in response to this?
Categorical, aggressive denial. Her representatives released a statement immediately labeling the allegations dangerous lies and calling the entire narrative reckless.
Is there anyone else who was actually there that night who can corroborate any of this? Because building a case on a 16-year-old nightclub interaction is incredibly difficult.
TMZ reached out to the former manager of the Spice Market nightclub who was working that night. He confirmed that both Katy Perry and Ruby Rose were indeed present at the venue. He explicitly stated that they both had way too much to drink, which adds another layer of complexity to the memory of the event. But he also stated firmly on the record that he never witnessed any physical assault or inappropriate touching take place.
This is a huge cultural shift, though. You see people get called out on social media all the time, but moving from a random Threads post complaining about a party to a formal state-led criminal proceeding by the Victoria police detectives, that changes the gravity of the situation entirely. The digital friction is having extreme real-world legal consequences right now.
And if you want the absolute ultimate example of digital actions turning into severe, inescapable legal reality, we have to talk about Johnny Somali.
Oh, this guy. The streamer.
Yeah.
The absolute menace of international travel.
Ramzi Khalid Ismail. He is an American internet personality who makes his living doing highly provocative, aggressive, disruptive behavior while traveling internationally and live streaming it to his audience. Well, the Seoul Western District Court in South Korea just handed down his final sentence.
They did not mess around with him, did they? High-trust societies do not tolerate that kind of social friction.
Not at all. He was found guilty on multiple charges, including obstruction of business and the distribution of deepfake content. The judge sentenced him to 6 months of actual prison labor plus 20 days of detention.
Prison labor. That is not a slap on the wrist. That is not a fine. That is hard physical consequences. What exactly did he do to warrant prison labor in a foreign country?
It was a long string of deliberate public disturbances. The specific charges stem from him aggressively harassing staff at a Korean amusement park and creating non-consensual deepfake videos of individuals. But the court also specifically noted his overarching pattern of behavior, which included playing incredibly loud offensive music on public transit buses and actively harassing random innocent pedestrians with literal bags of rotten fish.
Right, because that is just a genius life strategy. You buy a $1,000 international flight, go through customs, and wander into a highly organized foreign country just to throw bags of literal rotting fish at people trying to get to work. Truly a brilliant criminal mastermind. I am genuinely shocked it took this long to end in prison labor.
And the consequences get significantly worse for him. The court ordered him to legally register as a sex offender in South Korea due to the deepfake charges, and they imposed a severe 5-year employment restriction at any institution serving children or the disabled. Once he completes his 6 months of prison labor, he is going to be deported with a permanent entry ban from South Korea.
Wait, if he is deported back to the United States, does the sex offender status just vanish when he crosses the border? Does he just get a clean slate?
No. Part of the legal framework means he will be required to register as a sex offender in the United States once he is deported back home. The legal consequence of his digital live stream is going to follow him for years. It is one of the most severe, uncompromising crackdowns on a foreign streamer in South Korean history.
You cannot just log off from that. The accountability is crossing international borders violently. Speaking of crossing international borders, what is the latest on the Ashley Jenny case in Zanzibar? Because the timeline of that story is deeply, deeply disturbing.
It is a horrific and highly suspicious situation. Ashley Jenny was a popular content creator. She and her fiancé, Joe McCann, were in Zanzibar for a vacation to celebrate her 31st birthday. He had actually just proposed to her on the trip, but it ended in absolute tragedy. Authorities in Zanzibar just confirmed they have formally seized Joe McCann's passport for questioning regarding her death.
They seized his passport, so he is legally trapped in Tanzania. He cannot leave. What does the medical examiner actually say happened?
That is where the stories completely contradict each other, and the friction between his narrative and the physical evidence is glaring. The official cause of death has been listed by the medical examiner as cerebral hypoxia resulting from strangulation and suffocation.
Strangulation and suffocation. Someone choked her. But what did the fiancé claim happened?
McCann originally told authorities that he found Janae hanged on the door of her room on April 9. He tried to present it as a suicide.
Hanged on the door.
Yep.
But the police report mentioned a severe domestic dispute the night before, didn't it?
Yes. Police confirmed there was a massive domestic dispute the night before, on April 8. It was severe enough that hotel staff physically intervened and separated the couple into entirely different rooms for the night to de-escalate the situation.
Okay.
The next day is when McCann claims he found her, but the family in the United States is raising massive alarms. McCann allegedly told the family initially that she was okay and just being treated for a minor issue. It took an agonizing 11 hours for him to notify them of her actual condition and her death.
Pause for a second and look at the logistics of the Zanzibar case. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment with your theory. How does an 11-hour delay in calling the family even begin to make sense? You find your fiancé dead, and you wait almost half a day to tell her parents. While initially lying and telling them she is fine, the medical examiner's finding of strangulation and suffocation completely torpedoes his story of a hanging. The physical mechanics of the injuries do not match his timeline.
No arrests have officially been made yet, but Jinnah's family is reportedly considering traveling to Zanzibar to meet directly with local officials as the investigation advances. It is a chilling timeline, and the physical evidence is painting a very dark picture.
We're going to keep tracking that investigation closely, but first, we have to talk about a game-winning block that was so intense it literally broke the internet stream.
The sports world was completely on fire last night. The NBA postseason officially tipped off with the play-in tournament, and the Charlotte Hornets secured an absolutely thrilling, heart-stopping victory over the Miami Heat, 127-126.
A one-point game. And this was a massive historic deal for Charlotte. They have been starved for a win like this.
Huge. It was their first postseason home game in 10 entire years. The arena was totally packed with screaming fans wearing matching Protect the Hive t-shirts. The final seconds were pure, unadulterated chaos. LaMelo Ball drove in for a clutch, high-pressure layup to take the lead. Miami brought the ball down the court, put up a desperate shot, and Miles Bridges came soaring out of nowhere for a buzzer-beating block to seal the game.
A buzzer-beating block is the most disrespectful, incredible, demoralizing way to win a basketball game. It is pure athletic dominance.
It gets crazier. That game-winning block by Bridges was literally the only Eastside-wide block recorded by either team in the final 5 minutes of the entire game. The defensive intensity just spiked at the exact right millisecond, but it was not without heavy controversy.
Oh.
Miami Heat center Bam Adebayo was injured during the game after being tripped by LaMelo Ball. The Heat coach was furious on the sideline, actively arguing it was a dirty play that should have resulted in an immediate ejection.
And Miami now has to face a brutal elimination game later this week. But wait, I was trying to watch the end of this game, and my screen completely froze right as the final play was setting up.
You were absolutely not alone. The national broadcast was exclusively hosted on Amazon Prime Video, and it was plagued by massive technical difficulties right during the biggest, most critical moments of the fourth quarter. There was widespread viewer frustration everywhere online. People were losing their minds on social media.
I know half of you listening on a drive right now are screaming at your dashboard about streaming services ruining live sports. If you're on YouTube, sound off in the comments. Are we done with exclusively streamed playoff games? You pay for all these fragmented, expensive subscriptions, and the digital feed literally dies during the final game-deciding possession of a playoff game.
It's crazy.
It is infuriating. The irony is we just talk about AI running the entire global tech architecture, and Amazon cannot even keep a video feed alive for 5 minutes.
Despite the technical glitches shutting millions of people out, the game still recorded some of the highest regional viewership numbers for the Hornets in the modern era. People desperately wanted to see that team win. But basketball history wasn't just made in the NBA last night. The WNBA draft took place on April 14, and it was a record-breaking night for collegiate athletes making the leap.
The talent pool coming into the WNBA right now is completely unprecedented. The skill level is off the charts. Who went #1 overall?
Azzi Fudd out of UConn. She was selected as the #1 overall pick by the Dallas Wings, and she is entering the professional league with a massive pre-existing financial footprint. She already has a secured $500,000 endorsement payday waiting for her.
Wow.
It just proves the commercial value of the league is exploding. Commissioner Katy Allbirds even announced during the draft that the WNBA is actively exploring playing international games overseas as early as 2027.
A $500,000 endorsement before she even steps onto a professional court. That changes the financial calculus for these athletes entirely. They're walking in as highly capitalized brands. But what happened with UCLA? because my feed was just nonstop Bruins all night.
UCLA completely dominated the narrative. They established a new league record. 5 players from UCLA were selected in the first round alone, and 6 overall.
5 players from one single university team in the first round.
Yes, their 5 first-round picks represented 41% of the total first-round selections. Almost half the entire first round was just the UCLA locker room relocating to the pros. It is the most dominant performance by a single university in the history of the WNBA draft. Star guard Raven Johnson got picked by the same team as Caitlin Clark, which is an insane backcourt pairing. And immediately after she was drafted, the Valkyries made a huge splash by trading Flau'jae Johnson to a new roster.
Having 41% of a professional draft's first round come from a single college roster is completely absurd. It speaks to an unbelievable concentration of coaching and talent. They are already calling it the blue era of women's basketball.
It is all connected, from the friction on the basketball court to the friction on the global stage. We are watching massive foundational systems transition right in front of us.
Exactly. Look at the thematic through line today. You have state-level leverage with the U.S. Naval Blockade, basically holding global energy pricing hostage, creating massive economic friction. You have financial leverage, where Morgan Stanley and Bank of America are generating massive trading profits off that exact same friction.
And the technology pivot is the most terrifying part. A social media company fires 16% of its staff because artificial intelligence can write 65% of its code, eliminating the human friction. A failed wool shoe brand rebrands as an AI server farm, and their stock jumps 400%. And we just discovered a way to make electrons flow with zero friction, which means the power limits on those AI servers are about to vanish.
Think about that for a second. If AI is writing the code, and quantum graphene allows the computers to run infinitely without overheating, and random retail companies are pivoting to handle the cloud processing, what happens when the human element is completely removed from the global economy? What happens when that Katy E-shaped recovery just becomes a permanent, locked-in reality where the algorithms do the work, the elites reap the profits, and the rest of us just pay higher prices at the pump?
It is the ultimate defining question of the efficiency-first era, and it is something to seriously mull over while you finish your drive today.
All right, if we made your drive, your workout, or your downtime even a little bit better today, do us a massive favor. Whether you are watching on YouTube, streaming on Spotify, listening on Apple Podcasts, or literally anywhere else, hit that follow or subscribe button right now. We drop episodes like this every single day, bringing you the world's news in the most interesting way possible. Lock in, because you do not want to miss the crazy stories we have queued up for tomorrow. See you then.